There is a children's playroom in a suburban house in Texas, where on Christmas Eve of 2016, a 27-year-old man is folded into a chair built for a 4-year-old. His knees ride up against his chest. The dolls on the carpet around him are arranged where toddlers left them, sitting up, lying down, frozen mid-tea party. They have been the only audience he has had for the last several weeks. He has $1,036 in his bank account. He has just sent his last $22,000 to an employee, a salesman with a baby at home and another child on the way. He has 30 days to launch 6 businesses he cannot afford to launch, using nothing but the credit card in his wallet, and one sentence he heard 3 years earlier from a stranger in a Las Vegas penthouse. His ears are hot and red from the phone being pressed against them for what feels like an hour. He keeps switching hands because his arm gets tired from holding the phone up. On the other end of the line is a representative from a payment processing company, a man with the unfazed apathy of someone who delivers this exact news 100 times a week, explaining that the company is going to be holding $120,000 of his money for the next 6 months. Precautionary, standard procedure. The $120,000 isn't even theirs. It's the money he was going to use to pay his salesman, to pay rent, to buy food, to stay alive. 5 days from now, this man is going to do something that almost no rational person looking at his bank account would do. He is going to swipe the credit card in his wallet, the only one he has left, and he is going to bet everything he has on that one sentence from the stranger in Vegas. By the end of this video, you are going to know what that sentence was. You are going to know what he charged to the card, and you are going to know what it bought him exactly 92 days later. But before any of that, before we can understand what kind of person makes a bet like that, we have to talk about the thing he was betting on, the thing every business in the world depends on, the thing almost nobody has, and the thing every person watching this video has probably been making the same mistake about for years. Every business, yours, mine, the dry cleaner down the street, Apple, the freelancer working out of a coffee shop, runs on the same basic exchange. Money flows one way, goods or services flow the other way. That trade is the entire engine of the economy, and the moment that initiates it, the thing that says here is what I'm going to give you, here is what I am asking you to pay, here are the terms, is what we call an offer. Without an offer, you don't have a business, you have an idea. With a bad offer, you don't have a business either, you have a slow-motion bankruptcy. With a mediocre offer, you have what most people end up with, a treadmill. You work harder every year for a little less every year, and you tell yourself that this is just what running a business looks like. With a good offer, you finally turn a profit. You build something modest. You survive. But once in a while, somebody figures out how to make an offer so well constructed, so generous on the value side, and so confident on the price side, so impossible to compare to anything else available on the market, that the prospect on the other end of it actually feels like they would be stupid to say no. That kind of offer doesn't get you a slightly better business. It gets you sometimes a complete change of life. Almost every entrepreneur in the world is dealing with the same 2 problems. Not enough customers, not enough cash at the end of the month. And almost every entrepreneur tries to solve those problems with surface level tricks. Cut prices to get more customers, which kills the cash. Raise prices to get more cash, which scares away customers. It's a treadmill, and most people stay on it for their entire careers. But there is an entirely different game underneath that one. A game where the offer itself is so good that you don't have to compete on price at all. A game where you stop selling what everyone else is selling and start selling something the market literally cannot compare to anything else. A game where you charge more and your customers are happier, because the gap between what they paid and what they got is so big, they end up telling their friends. Most businesses aren't actually selling an offer, they are selling a commodity. Which sounds like a small distinction, but it's the distinction that decides whether you spend your whole career barely making rent, or whether you build something that genuinely changes the trajectory of your life. A commodity is something the customer can compare to 100 other versions of the same thing. So the only question they ask is which one is cheapest. An offer is something so distinct that the customer can't compare it to anything. So the only question they ask is whether the value is worth the price. The commodity seller competes on price. The offer maker competes on value. The commodity seller works harder every year for thinner margins. The offer maker works smarter every year for higher margins. Every successful business you have ever heard of figured this out at some point in its life. Every failed business you have heard of did not. The man in the playroom learned about this game in a hotel room 3 years before that Christmas Eve. He was 23 years old. He had paid $3,000. He didn't have to be in the room. He didn't own a business yet. He didn't even know what most of the words in the room meant. He was about to meet someone who would say one sentence to him, and that sentence would, eventually, save his life. It is 2013. The man we have been talking about is 23 years old, and his name is Alex. He is standing in a hotel suite on the upper floor of a Las Vegas casino. The carpet is plush. The view through the floor-to-ceiling windows is panoramic. The marble countertop in the kitchenette has bottled water on it that costs $9 per bottle. There are 10 people in the room. 9 of them own businesses. The 10th is Alex. He is wearing a black t-shirt with the words Beast Mode printed across the chest. He didn't pay for it. It was given out at some fitness event a few months back. It is one of only 5 shirts hanging in his closet that morning. He is wearing it to a meeting where every other person in the room is in a button-down or a polo, and he is acutely aware of this in the way that 23-year-olds are acutely aware of every detail that makes them feel like a fraud. To get into this room, he had paid $3,000. Money he did not have. Money he had borrowed and budgeted and rationalized and quietly panicked about for weeks. What does a 23-year-old kid with no business and a free fitness t-shirt and $3,000 of borrowed money buy his way into? A weekend with successful entrepreneurs. The host's name is TJ. TJ runs multiple successful companies. While going over the agenda for the weekend, he mentions in passing, almost as an afterthought, that he is on track to make $1 million that year. $1 million. Alex's stomach drops. Not in a bad way. In the way it drops when a door you didn't know existed swings open. He is spellbound. His brain begins running the same loop on repeat. I want to be like this guy. I will do anything. I will do anything. There is just one problem. Alex doesn't understand a single word these people are saying. They are throwing around acronyms, KPIs, CPLs, CACs, conversion rates, lifetime value, ROAS, funnels, front end and back end, ad spend, cold traffic. They are speaking what is, to Alex, an entirely foreign language. He is nodding along. He is making small notes in his notebook to look like he is keeping up. He is internally drowning. He is bad at pretending. He has always been bad at pretending. And TJ, the host, the millionaire, the one who set this whole thing up, is watching him from across the room. Between sessions, TJ walks over. He is friendly. He is warm. He doesn't make Alex feel small. They make some small talk. Alex is 23 and self-conscious, and trying not to seem 23 and self-conscious, which makes him seem more 23 and self-conscious. And then TJ asks him a question. Do you want to know the secret to sales? Alex has never sold anything in his life. He has never read a book on it. He has very recently learned what the term means. He leans forward. He opens his notebook. He stares at TJ with the intensity of someone who has just been promised the location of buried treasure. He is ready. Make people an offer so good they would feel stupid saying no. Alex writes it down. He underlines it. He circles it. And in the moment those words land, his entire understanding of what business is, what selling is, what he is even doing in that room, collapses and rebuilds itself. Because what he realizes, almost instantly, is the implication. He doesn't have to be skilled at sales. He doesn't have to be charismatic. He doesn't have to be older. He doesn't have to look the part. He doesn't have to be the most experienced person in the room. He just has to come up with offers that anyone at all would say yes to. The greatest game of his life, he later writes, had just begun. He puts the notebook down. He looks back across the room at the other people there. The ones with the polos, the ones with the businesses, the ones with the acronyms. And for the first time that whole weekend, he doesn't feel small, because he understands at that moment that everything everyone in that room had been talking about, the KPIs, the conversion rates, the funnels, the metrics, all of it was downstream of one question: what is the offer? Get the offer right, and the metrics get good. Get the offer wrong, and no metric, no funnel, no clever tactic in the world is ever going to save you. 23-year-old Alex didn't know it then, but the next decade of his life was going to be one long, expensive, often humiliating experiment in trying to actually make an offer that good. He would fail at it dozens of times. He would build 6 gyms and then sell 5 of them. He would lose a partner who emptied his bank account. He would total his car. He would take a DUI. He would watch his mother go to the hospital in critical condition. He would end up sitting in a children's playroom on Christmas Eve with $1,036 to his name. And then finally, on day 3,000 and something of trying, he would make one. Now, let me pull back from that hotel room for a second, because what TJ said in that moment is, on the surface, almost too simple to be useful. Make people an offer so good they would feel stupid saying no. Yeah, sure, of course. That's like saying the secret to writing a great novel is to write a great novel, but underneath that one sentence is an entire architecture. And almost everything we're going to talk about from here on out is, in one way or another, a piece of it. Here is the first piece. Most businesses don't have an offer at all. They have something less than an offer. And the gap between the levels is the gap between a life of struggle and a life of freedom. Imagine a ladder. At the bottom rung, there is no offer. The business doesn't actually know what it is selling. The owner is winging it on every call, making it up as they go, hoping someone says yes. That business doesn't last long. One rung up, there is a bad offer. Something to sell, but so badly constructed, overpriced for the value, vaguely described, missing key elements, that the only people who buy it are confused or coerced. Negative profit, refund requests, burnout. Above that, there is a decent offer. Customers don't hate it. They don't love it either. The business limps along. Profit margins are razor thin. The owner works 70 hours a week to make what an employee at a normal job would make working 40. Above that, there is a good offer, some profit, reasonable customers. The business survives, maybe even modestly thrives. This is, statistically, where most successful small businesses live their entire lifespan. And then, way above that, at the top of the ladder, there is the thing TJ called a grand slam offer. An offer so well constructed, so generous on the value side, so confident on the price side, so impossible to compare to any alternative on the market, that the prospect on the other end feels like, the more they think about it, saying no looks crazy. That kind of offer doesn't get you a slightly better business. It gets you, occasionally, a complete change of life. In the next 90 days, after Alex hears that sentence from TJ, he is going to drop out of his corporate consulting job, move across the country, and open a gym. 3 years later, after some early wins, some catastrophic losses, and a partner stealing his life savings, he is going to be sitting in his girlfriend's parents' children's playroom on Christmas Eve with $1,036 in his bank account, and the only asset still standing between him and bankruptcy will be that one sentence and his ability to actually make the offer it describes. Now, here is something important, because the way I just described this might make it sound like the whole game is the offer itself. Like if you just construct the right sentence, the right pitch, the right pricing structure, you win. But that is not what the man in the playroom is about to find out. What he is about to find out is that the greatest offer ever made, presented to the wrong audience, is worth nothing. That you can have the perfect product, the perfect price, the perfect guarantee, and if you build it for a market that doesn't actually want what you're selling, or a market that is dying, you will work yourself into the ground and have nothing to show for it. Which raises the obvious question, how do you actually know which market is the right one? 3 years after that conversation in Vegas, the man in the playroom, 27 now, scrunched in a child's chair with dolls staring at him, is going to swipe a credit card with a $100,000 limit. He is going to bet his entire life on whether those 11 words from a stranger in a hotel room are actually worth anything. We are not there yet. There is something he needs to learn first, and it is something almost every entrepreneur, including some of the smartest ones I have ever known personally, get wrong. Because here is the strange thing about offers. You can have a perfect one, beautifully constructed, generously priced, ironclad guarantee, and still lose. You can be a naturally gifted salesperson and still go broke. You can outwork everyone in your industry and still wake up at 43 with nothing in the bank. How is that possible? Let me tell you about a man named Lloyd. Lloyd is a friend of Alex's. They have known each other for years. Alex is, by the time we are talking about him, a successful entrepreneur. Multiple businesses, tens of millions of dollars in revenue, the kind of person other entrepreneurs come to for advice. But Alex will tell you, plainly and without flinching, that Lloyd is smarter than he is. Not by a little, by a lot. Lloyd is one of those people who, when he walks into a room, you can tell within 90 seconds, is operating 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else there. He is sharp, he is hardworking, he is genuinely talented at sales. He has the kind of natural instinct for human conversation that most salespeople spend their entire careers trying to develop. And about a decade ago, Lloyd built a software business. What the software did was simple. It helped newspapers, print newspapers, the actual, physical, throw it on your driveway kind, sell digital advertising on their websites. With a few clicks, a newspaper could set up a brand new ad service and instantly start making money from a product they had previously had no way to monetize. The business model was beautiful. Lloyd didn't charge the newspapers up front. He didn't ask for monthly retainers. He took a percentage of the revenue he added to their bottom line. If he made them money, he made money. If he didn't, he didn't. Think about what that means from the buyer's side. A newspaper getting that pitch is hearing, I will set up a new product for you. You will pay me nothing up front, and you will only pay me out of money I generate that you would never have generated without me. That is not a good offer. That is a great offer. There is no risk. There is no downside. There is, in any rational analysis, no reason to say no. And Lloyd was selling it. He was selling it well. He was a natural. He could walk into a meeting with a newspaper publisher and have them signing within an hour. But despite all of that, the great offer, the great salesman, the great work ethic, Lloyd's business was slowly, quietly dying. He couldn't figure out why. He tried every angle. He retooled the product. He tweaked the pricing. He hired more salespeople. He fired some of them. He rewrote the pitch. He updated the demo. He added features. He cut features. Nothing worked. Alex watched this happen for months, and he says, and this is one of the most uncomfortable things to admit about a friend you respect, that the answer was obvious to Alex. From the outside, he could see it the way you can sometimes see, with terrible clarity, that someone you love is in a marriage that is killing them, while they themselves cannot see it at all. What do you think the problem was? Was it the product? It wasn't. The product genuinely worked. The newspapers that used it made more money. Was it the offer? It wasn't. The offer was, as we just discussed, almost impossible to refuse on a rational basis. Was it the sales? It wasn't. Lloyd could close. So what was it? His customers, newspapers, were a market that was shrinking by 25% every year. Newspapers were dying. Not slowly, quickly. Subscriptions were collapsing. Print advertising was vanishing. Newsrooms were laying off staff in waves. The entire industry was contracting at a rate that no individual newspaper could outrun, and no salesperson, no matter how good, could outsell. Lloyd was, in the cleanest possible sense of the phrase, selling life rafts on the Titanic. The product worked. The offer was great. He was good. None of it mattered. For years, Lloyd kept fighting. He had, as Alex puts it, the high-achieving entrepreneur's curse, the deep, almost religious belief that any problem can be outworked, that if you just push harder, refine more, iterate faster, you will eventually break through. But some problems can't be outworked. Some problems are not problems with you. They are problems with the floor you are standing on. Eventually, after years of this, Lloyd accepted what he was up against. He downsized the company. He stopped fighting. And then in 2020, COVID hit. Almost overnight, the world needed face masks. Hundreds of millions of them. Every government, every hospital, every school, every grocery store, every airline. Demand exploded faster than any supply chain on Earth could meet. Lloyd looked at this. Same Lloyd, same brain, same skills, and he pivoted. He started an automated mask manufacturing company. He used new manufacturing technology that brought the cost per mask below what anyone in America could buy them from China. Within 5 months, he was doing millions of dollars per month. Same human being, same intelligence, same work ethic, same sales ability, different market. The market was the difference. There is a famous parable in marketing. Alex didn't invent it, he just retells it well, about a professor and his students. The professor stands up at the front of a classroom and asks the students a question. He says, imagine you are going to open a hot dog stand, and imagine you can have one and only one advantage over your competitors. Just one. Which advantage do you choose? The students start shouting answers. Location, quality, low prices, the best taste, best buns, best toppings. The list goes on. They keep shouting answers. They run out of obvious ones. They start reaching for clever ones. The room eventually gets quiet. They have run out. The professor smiles. He says, a starving crowd. Think about what that means. You could have the worst hot dogs in the city, stale buns, mediocre meat, burnt edges. You could have the worst location, a side street, a back alley, a corner nobody walks past. You could be charging twice what your competitors charge. You could have no marketing skill whatsoever. But if you are the only hot dog stand in town and the local college football game is letting out, if there are 80,000 people pouring out of a stadium in November and they have been drinking beer for 4 hours and they are starving, you are going to sell every hot dog you have. You will sell out before you finish setting up. Why? Because the demand was already there. You weren't trying to convince people to want hot dogs. The crowd was already starving. You just had to be the one standing in front of them when they were ready to buy. This is the first thing almost every entrepreneur underestimates. We focus on what we can control: our product, our marketing, our pitch, our skill, our work ethic, because those are the things that feel like they should matter. And they do matter, but they matter in a specific order. And if you get the order wrong, nothing you do downstream is going to save you. The order is this: the market, the starving crowd comes first. The offer comes second. The persuasion skill of the salesperson comes third. Get a perfect 10 on the market, and you can have a 5 on the offer and a 5 on persuasion, and you will still get rich. The starving crowd will buy the bad hot dogs at the bad prices because they are starving. Get a 5 on the market, a normal market, neither starving nor dead, and you'd better make sure your offer is a 10. Because in a normal market, the offer is what tips the scales between you and your competition. Most people watching this video are in this category. A normal market with a normal offer is exactly the treadmill we talked about earlier. Get a 1 or a 2 on the market, a dying market, a shrinking market, a market that is being eaten alive by some larger trend you cannot reverse, and it doesn't matter what you do. Lloyd had a perfect 10 on the offer and probably an 8 on persuasion, and his market killed him anyway. One of the hardest things to accept as an entrepreneur is that some of the most important decisions in your business have nothing to do with how hard you work or how good you are at your craft. Sometimes the most important decision is just whether you are pointing your skill at a population of people who actually want what you have in numbers large enough and growing fast enough to support a real business. So how do you find a starving crowd? There are essentially 4 things to look for. They are not complicated, but they have to all be present, and most entrepreneurs ignore at least one of them. The first is pain. Are the people in this market in real, persistent, urgent pain about a problem you can solve? Not mild inconvenience, not occasional annoyance. Pain, the kind of pain people lose sleep over, talk to their friends about, search for solutions to at 2 in the morning. The second is purchasing power. Do the people in this market actually have the money to pay for a solution? You can find a market in deep pain, say college students broke and overworked. But if they can't pay, you don't have a business. You have a charity. The third is the ease of finding them. Can you actually reach this group? Are they on a platform you can advertise to, in communities you can join, on lists you can build? A market hidden behind walls you cannot scale is, in practical terms, a market that does not exist. And the fourth, and this is the one Lloyd missed, is whether the market is growing. Not necessarily exploding, but growing, or at least stable. A market that is shrinking faster than you can grow inside it is a market you cannot win. The current is too strong. You will paddle until you collapse, and the river will still carry you backwards. Pain, money, easy to reach, growing, 4 things. Most people focus on 1 or 2. The ones who build something extraordinary get all 4 right at once. Alex tells a story in passing about a coaching client who was a relationship expert. The client wanted to help college students with their relationships. Alex pushed back hard. The pain was there. College students do struggle in relationships, but the purchasing power was almost nothing. 20-year-olds are broke, and the targeting was scattered. There is no list of college students who care enough about their relationship to pay for help. Alex suggested instead, focus on people in the second half of life. Empty nesters, retirees, people whose marriages had quietly drifted over 30 years. The pain there was deeper. These are people closer to the end of their lives, watching the relationships they hope to spend the next 20 years on slip away. The money was there. Older people have savings. The targeting was there. Older people are easy to find through specific channels, and the market was growing. At the time, more people were turning 65 every year than turning 20. Same skill, same expertise, same product, essentially, different market. One version was a struggling business. The other version was a fortune. Lloyd went from newspapers to masks. The relationship expert went from college students to retirees. In both cases, what changed was not who they were or what they could do. What changed was the floor under their feet. Now, once you are standing in front of the right crowd, the question becomes what to charge them. And what almost every entrepreneur has been told about pricing, that you should be competitive, that you should price fairly, that you should look at what your competitors charge and stay in the same neighborhood, is exactly the trap that keeps most businesses small forever. In fact, the cheaper you price, the harder your business gets. The more you discount, the worse your customers behave. The more competitive you try to be, the closer to bankruptcy you actually move. I know that sounds backwards. I know everything you have absorbed your entire life, about value for money, about the customer is always right, about not gouging people, fights against this idea, but the man in the playroom is about to do something that proves it. 2 months after that bank statement showed $1,036, he is going to walk into a market where the cheap competitors charge $500 and the most expensive player charges $5,000, and he is going to charge $16,000, 3 times the most expensive person in the room, 32 times the cheapest, and it is going to be the best decision he ever makes. It is 2017. Alex is 27. He has just watched his life come apart for the second time in 3 years, and he is about to make a bet that on paper makes no sense at all. The market he is walking into is the gym industry, specifically small, independently owned gyms, the owner-operator kind, the kind where one person, often the founder, knows every member by name and works 14-hour days because that is what it takes to keep the lights on. He has built 6 of these gyms himself. He sold 5 of them. The selling was supposed to fund his next chapter, a company that would help other gym owners do what he had figured out how to do. He had, at one point, around $46,000 in seed money sitting in a joint account with a new business partner. One morning, Alex woke up, opened his banking app the way he opened it every morning, and stared at a number that, for a few seconds, did not register. $300? His partner had emptied the account. In the same 30 days, his mother went into critical condition after a near-fatal accident. He totaled his car in a head-on collision at 60 miles per hour. He earned a DUI as the consolation prize. This is the man who, 2 months later, is sitting in a children's playroom with $1,036 in his bank account. But here is what almost nobody who tells this story tells you. In that 30-day stretch, between his partner stealing his money and Christmas Eve in the playroom, Alex had been doing one thing that was working. He had been flying out to gyms, one at a time, and running what he called a challenge offer. 6-week transformation. He would handle all the marketing. He would fill the gym with new members. He would split the revenue with the owner, upfront in cash. That is how he made the $120,000 the payment processor was now sitting on. That is how he had paid his salesman the $22,000 commission. That is also why, when the processor decided to hold the funds, he had nothing left. But the offer worked. The offer was the one good thing in his life. The offer worked when nothing else in his life worked. So when Christmas Eve came, and he was sitting in that playroom with the dolls and the beige carpet and the dead phone in his hand, he did the calculation any reasonable person in his position would refuse to do. He had one credit card left, an old business card from when he had owned his gyms. The limit was $100,000. He had not used it in years. He had 6 gyms scheduled to launch in 2 days, 6 different cities, 6 plane tickets, 6 rental cars, 6 hotel rooms, 6 ad budgets. Across all of it, the daily burn rate was $3,300, $3,300 per day of money he did not have, going onto a card that every day it stayed on made him a deeper and deeper hole. He was, as he put it later, going into debt at $412 per working hour. He turned the ads on. He still remembers the way his hand shook on the trackpad as he switched the toggle from off to on, and then he made a second decision. A decision that on the surface looks even crazier than the credit card decision. A decision that if you talk to 100 business consultants and ask them whether to do it, every single one of them would tell you no. He decided that when the offer landed, when the prospects called in to ask about the program, the price he was going to charge was going to be 3 times higher than the most expensive competitor in the entire industry. When Alex entered this space, he did the homework. He looked at what every other player charged. The cheap end was a digital marketing service for gyms, $500 per month. The most expensive player in the entire space charged $5,000. One single competitor at the top end. Everyone else clustered down at the cheap end. Alex's price for his program was $16,000, 3 times the most expensive player, 32 times the cheapest. For a 16-week program, And then he upsold 35% of the people who said yes to that into a 3-year agreement at $42,000 per year. I want you to do the math on this with me. The average independently owned gym owner in America, according to industry data Alex pulled, takes home about $35,000 in profit per year. That is the average, which means half of these owners are taking home less than that. A working class income, tight budgets, mortgages, kids in school, and the kid in the playroom, 27 years old, no track record at scale, no recognizable name, no MBA, no Harvard pedigree, no famous mentor, was telling these owners they should pay him $16,000 up front, or better, $42,000 a year for 3 years, which is more than the average gym owner takes home in an entire year of 14-hour days. And here is the part that should break your brain. They paid. Not all of them. Most of them said no, the way most prospects in any market say no. But enough of them said yes that the burn rate of $3,300 a day stopped being a problem within weeks. That January 2017, Alex did just over $100,000 in revenue. The next month, more. By the end of the year, his company was doing $1.5 million per month. 12 months after that, $4.4 million per month. And then, 2 years from the playroom, he crossed $120 million in cumulative sales. But the point of this story isn't the numbers. The point of this story is the question I want you to actually sit with. How does a kid in a children's playroom convince working-class gym owners to pay him 3 times what the most expensive competitor in the industry charges? How does he convince anyone, let alone hundreds and then thousands of them? Most people, when they hear a story like this, assume the answer is charisma. He must be a great salesman. He must have some kind of magnetic personality. He doesn't. He has said this himself, repeatedly, in front of his own audiences. He is not a natural seller. He is bookish. He likes spreadsheets. He gets uncomfortable on stage. The reason he writes books and records lectures instead of doing live sales calls all day is because, for most of his career, the live sales calls drained him. So it isn't charisma. The real answer is something he has said in maybe 15 different ways across his books and his videos. But the cleanest version is this: his conviction was stronger than their skepticism. What does that actually mean? It means this: when a prospect, a working-class gym owner, mortgage, 2 kids, 10 years in business, 60 hours a week, heard the price tag of $16,000, the prospect's first reaction was, naturally, that this is insane. Their skepticism was, on a scale of 1 to 10, an 11. But Alex's belief in the value of what he was selling was a 12. He had data. He had numbers. He had a survey he later ran on 158 gyms in the program. After 11 months, on average, those gyms were adding $19,000 in monthly revenue, $239,000 per year. Profit was tripling. Customer counts were going up by 67 members on average. Retention was getting better. He was charging $16,000 to deliver, on average $239,000 in additional revenue. The gym owner who paid him was, in real economic terms, making about $14 for every $1 they spent on the program. It was, despite the eye-watering price tag, the cheapest thing they would buy that year. And once Alex understood that, once he had the numbers in his hand, the conversation with the prospect stopped being a sales pitch and started being a math lesson. Imagine you are the gym owner. You are sitting on a sales call with this 27-year-old you have never heard of. He shows you calmly what other gyms in your situation paid him last year. He shows you calmly what those gyms made. He shows you the math of the trade. Pay him 16, get back 239. You are not haggling. You are not negotiating. You are doing arithmetic. This is the part most people miss when they hear stories like this. They think the kid was using some kind of high-pressure sales technique, some manipulation, some psychological trick. He wasn't. He was just standing in the place where the math was so obviously in the prospect's favor that the prospect couldn't talk themselves out of it. That is what TJ meant in the Vegas penthouse when he said make people an offer so good they would feel stupid saying no. He didn't mean be a great salesman. He didn't mean be charismatic. He meant construct the offer so well, deliver so much more value than you charge, that any reasonably intelligent person on the other end of the table would be embarrassed to walk away from it. Now, here is the part of the story that almost nobody talks about. The part Alex himself rarely emphasizes, because the conclusion most people want to draw from this is charge premium prices. And yes, that is true, but it is not actually the lesson. The lesson is this: Alex could only charge premium prices because he was delivering premium value. The number on the invoice was $16,000, but the value being exchanged on the other side of that invoice was $239,000. The reason the gym owner said yes, the reason his conviction was stronger than their skepticism, was because the gap between what the customer paid and what the customer received was so massive that it functionally erased the price. Most businesses are stuck in a different version of this equation. They charge $100. They deliver $110 of value. The gap between price and value is so small that the customer spends the entire decision-making process trying to decide whether the trade is fair. And whenever that is the conversation, is this fair? Is this worth it? Is this a rip-off? The customer will eventually find someone cheaper. You don't escape that conversation by lowering your price. You escape it by raising your value so high that the price stops mattering. You escape it by becoming so different from anything else available that there is nothing to compare you to. 99% of small businesses in America need to raise their prices, not lower them. Profit is oxygen. It fuels the fire of growth. Without it, you cannot deliver more value next year than you delivered this year. Without it, you cannot serve more people next year than you served this year. Without it, you slowly suffocate while telling yourself you are being noble. Alex puts it bluntly. The number one mistake most entrepreneurs make is being afraid to charge for the value they actually deliver. They confuse price with morality. They think charging more is somehow taking advantage of people, so they undercharge. And then 2 years later, they go out of business, and the customers who would have benefited from their work never get the chance to be helped at all. The gym owners who said yes to Alex weren't being taken advantage of. They were getting a deal. The structure was such that they were always going to get a deal. The price was high, but the value was so much higher that, even after writing the check, every person on the other end of the transaction walked away ahead. That is what a grand slam offer actually is. Not a high price, not a clever pitch, a deliberately constructed gap between what someone pays and what they receive. A gap so wide that saying no looks crazy and saying yes looks obvious. Now, pull back to the playroom for a second. The man with the dolls, the beige carpet, the dead phone, the credit card he should not have swiped. 2 months from that statement showing $1,036, he is going to be charging $16,000 per program. He is going to be at the start of a curve that takes him to $120 million in cumulative sales in 3 years. But how? How does any of this actually work? Because if I just said to you, charge more, deliver more value, simple, that would be a useless instruction. It is the kind of advice you nod along to and then have no idea how to actually apply on Monday morning. What Alex figured out, and what he eventually wrote down as cleanly as he could, was that the perceived value of any offer in the mind of any prospect runs on exactly 4 invisible variables. Just 4. Get them right and the price stops being negotiable. Get them wrong and it doesn't matter how cheap you are. The prospect will still find a reason to walk away. He calls it the value equation. And once you see it, once you actually understand the 4 levers, you cannot unsee it. It will start running in the background of your brain every time you walk into a store, Every time you look at an advertisement, every time you decide whether something is worth what it costs, let me show you what it is. Through the story of a small photography studio that in 2 years went from charging $300 a session to charging $1,500 and made 38 times more money in the process. There is a small photography studio, the kind you find in strip malls in mid-sized American cities. It is family-owned. They take family portraits, school photos, the occasional wedding. They have been in business for years. They know what they are doing. The average customer who walked in the door was paying them around $300. A typical session, a typical print package, the kind of thing you remember from when your mom dragged you to a JCPenney photo studio when you were 9. 2 years later, same studio, same owner, same cameras, same lighting equipment, same physical space. The average customer was paying $1,500, a 5 times increase in the average ticket. But here is the part that should stop you. The profit didn't go up by 5 times. The profit went up by 38 times. From $1,000 per week in profit to $38,000 per week in profit, they were spending less time per customer. The customers were leaving happier than before. The owner ended up donating, over the years that followed, almost $500,000 to children's charities, money that in the old version of the business simply did not exist to be given away. How? What changed wasn't the photographs. The photographs were essentially the same. What changed was the way 4 invisible variables showed up in the customer's mind during the buying decision. Alex calls it the value equation. And the easiest way to see it is to walk through what was actually happening with this photography studio before and after. In the before version, here is what a customer was buying. They were buying photographs. The photographer would walk in, set up lights, take pictures of the family, hand over a digital folder of edited images, maybe sell some prints, and that was the transaction. Photographs for dollars, 300 of them. In the after version, the customer was buying something different. They weren't buying photographs anymore. They were buying, and stay with me here because this is the whole game. They were buying the moment, 25 years from now, when their granddaughter would point at a wall and ask who that little girl in the picture was, and the answer would be, "That was you when you were 3. The customer wasn't paying $1,500 for JPEGs. They were paying for the proof that this version of their family had existed. The first variable in the value equation is what Alex calls the dream outcome, not the deliverable, not the product, the actual end state the customer wants, often without knowing how to articulate it. Photographs are a deliverable. The granddaughter pointing at the wall is a dream outcome. When you sell the deliverable, you compete on price because the customer can find another photographer just as good for less. When you sell the dream outcome, you compete on value because there is only one version of this family this year, and there is no second photographer who can also take that picture once the moment has passed. So that is the first lever. Move from selling the deliverable to selling the dream outcome. Increase how vividly the customer sees in their mind the actual end state they want. Not the thing you do, but the thing your work produces in their life. But here is the catch. The dream outcome alone isn't enough, because every photographer in town can claim to capture the moment. Every dentist can claim to fix your smile. Every personal trainer can claim to get you the body you want. So the next thing the customer is, consciously or unconsciously asking is, "Yeah, but will I actually get this from you? How likely is it that this thing actually works for me?" This is the second variable in the value equation. Alex calls it the perceived likelihood of achievement. And the example he uses is brutal in its clarity. Imagine you need a plastic surgeon. You can choose between 2 surgeons. They both went to the same medical school. They both have the same equipment. They both perform the same procedure on you in the same operating room. Surgeon A has performed this exact operation 10,000 times. Surgeon B is performing it for the first time. You are their first patient ever. How much would you pay Surgeon A versus Surgeon B? If you are a normal, sane person, the answer is a lot more for the first one, maybe an order of magnitude more. The procedure is, on paper, identical. The thing that changed is your belief that you will actually get the outcome you came for. That belief, that confidence, that certainty is something people pay enormous sums of money for. And most businesses fail to communicate it. They talk about themselves. They talk about their methodology. They talk about features. They almost never talk about why a reasonable, skeptical, busy person should believe that this thing will in fact work for them specifically. In the photography studio, the shift here looked like testimonials, before and afters, walls of framed pictures of past clients, stories of families who had come back year after year. It wasn't bragging, it was lowering the customer's risk. Every photo on the wall was, in effect, a proof point. By the time the customer was talking price, they had already quietly accepted that this was going to work. So that is the second lever. Increase the customer's perceived likelihood that this thing will actually deliver what you said it would deliver. The third variable is time. How long does the customer have to wait between paying you and getting the thing they actually came for? Alex says this clearly. The only thing that beats free is fast. People will pay enormous premiums for speed. The faster the gap closes between the moment of purchase and the moment of delivery, the more valuable your offer becomes. A weight loss program that takes 12 months to show results is fundamentally less valuable than a procedure that delivers the same outcome in an afternoon. Liposuction with a tummy tuck costs $25,000. A bootcamp gym membership costs $100 a month. Both theoretically get you to a similar physical outcome. The price difference reflects almost entirely the difference in time. In the photography studio, the shift here looked like same-day previews. The family would do the session, sit down for 15 minutes, and immediately see a curated set of the best frames on a large screen in the studio in the moment. They didn't wait 3 weeks for a digital folder. The dream outcome started materializing while they were still in the room. There is something deeper happening when you compress time. People who experience a small win quickly are dramatically more likely to follow through on the bigger arc. The science on this is overwhelming. Get someone an early real win and they will commit to the long-term work. Make them wait for any payoff at all, and a meaningful percentage will simply drift away. So that is the third lever. Decrease the time between payment and outcome. Engineer fast wins. Compress the calendar. And then there is the fourth variable, the one most entrepreneurs underestimate the most: effort and sacrifice. How much pain, work, embarrassment, hassle, friction, or willpower does the customer have to endure on the way to getting what they came for? This is by itself why some products that look identical on the surface end up priced 100 times apart. A bootcamp gym membership and a liposuction surgery. In theory, both get you a flatter stomach. In practice, the bootcamp requires 12 months of effort, sacrifice, social discomfort, hunger, fatigue, and the willpower to keep showing up at 5:30 in the morning when you would rather sleep. The liposuction requires you to show up to a clinic, lie down, and wake up. The gym charges $100 a month. The clinic charges $25,000. The customer, when given a real choice, chooses the clinic, not because they are rich, not because they are lazy, because the effort and sacrifice required to get the outcome through the gym is, when you do the math on what an hour of your life is worth, far more expensive than the cash price of the surgery. When the photography studio shifted to selling the dream outcome, the granddaughter pointing at the wall, the studio also began handling everything around the experience: wardrobe consultations, hair and makeup on site, curated music during the session, childcare guidance for the parents. The whole operation became frictionless. The customer didn't have to think, they didn't have to plan, they didn't have to bring 12 outfits and wonder which one would photograph well. The studio carried all of that off their shoulders. So put the four variables together. The dream outcome, the moment, the memory, the proof, went up. The perceived likelihood of achievement, the certainty that this thing was actually going to work for them, went up. The time delay, the wait between payment and the first emotional payoff, went down. The effort and sacrifice, the friction, the planning, the work the customer themselves had to put in, went down. 2 of those went up, 2 of those went down. And the result? The result is that the perceived value of the same product, in the same studio, taken with the same camera, multiplied by 5. This is the lever underneath the gym launch story. This is the lever underneath the agency software story. This is the lever underneath every business in the world that escapes the price competition trap and starts to feel from the outside like they are operating in some completely different category. They aren't operating in a different category. They are operating on a different equation. The same 4 variables dialed differently. Once you can see this equation, once it starts running automatically in the back of your head, you start noticing it everywhere. You notice when a hotel charges 3 times what the place across the street charges, and the gap is the time you waste at check-in versus the seamlessness of being known by name when you walk in. You notice when one consultant costs $100,000 and another costs $10,000, and the gap is whether the expensive one removes your effort or just adds to it. You notice the gap between selling photographs and selling memories, between selling a meal and selling an evening, between selling a service and selling certainty. And once you can see it, you can start deliberately to build it. Now, even with all of that, even with a starving crowd in front of you, even with premium pricing that lets you breathe, even with a value equation tuned so well that the customer is in real terms getting back $10 for every one they pay you, most offers still die because there are 5 more amplifiers, 5 things you can stack on top of an already strong offer that turn a great offer into one people genuinely cannot walk away from. Most businesses use one of them sloppily. The best businesses use all 5 deliberately. The first is scarcity. There is deliberately a limit to how much of this thing exists. The gym launch program had cohort caps. Only so many gyms in any given city. Only so many slots per quarter. Once a slot was filled, it was gone, and the next person had to wait. The cap wasn't a sales tactic. It was a real operational constraint, but the effect on prospects was that hesitation cost them. Wait too long, and the door closes. Scarcity, when it's real, makes prospects move. The second is urgency. There is a specific window in which this offer is available, on these terms, at this price. After that window closes, the terms change, or the offer is gone. Urgency, like scarcity, is about time. But where scarcity limits supply, urgency limits time. Both push the prospect from, "I'll think about it," to "I have to decide." The third is bonuses. Things stacked on top of the core offer that, in the prospect's eyes, increase the value of saying yes, without proportionally increasing the price. The agency software offer Alex built came with daily sales coaching for the client's staff, tested scripts, recordings of real sales calls, tested price points. Each of these was technically separate from the core service, but each one, in the prospect's mind, made the package feel heavier, more weighted in their favor, without changing the price tag at all. A well-stacked bonus list can, on its own, double the conversion rate of an offer. The fourth is guarantees, the reversal of risk. The prospect's #1 fear in any high-ticket purchase is, what if I pay this and it doesn't work for me? Every objection they raise, no matter how it sounds, is some version of that fear. A great guarantee dissolves the fear. The strongest version is performance-based. The agency software's grand slam offer was, "Only pay me when this works. If you don't make money, neither do I." Other versions are conditional money-back guarantees or first outcome guarantees. "We will keep paying your costs until you hit your first result." The point isn't the specific structure. The point is, when the prospect's biggest fear is met by a structure that explicitly takes that fear off the table, The conversation about whether to buy becomes a different conversation entirely. The fifth is the name. What you call the offer is, on average, the difference between a prospect ignoring it and a prospect responding to it. A free 6-week stress release challenge gets responses. A float tank center session, same product, different wrapper, does not. The name is the wrapping paper. It does not change what is inside the box, but it changes whether anyone bothers to open the box. 5 amplifiers. Stack them on top of an offer that already has a starving crowd, premium pricing, and a tuned value equation, and what you get is something the marketplace genuinely struggles to refuse, not because of trickery, because of construction. The thing has been built so well on so many dimensions at once that walking away from it starts to feel, to a reasonable person on the other side of the table, like a mistake. That is what TJ meant. In the Vegas penthouse in 2013, to a 23-year-old in a free t-shirt who didn't yet own a business. Make people an offer so good they would feel stupid saying no. He didn't mean make a great pitch. He meant make a great offer, built well enough that the pitch becomes almost optional. Now, I want to take you back to the playroom. The man in the children's chair, with the doll scattered around him, watching the dead phone in his hand, the bank balance of $1,036, the salesman's commission already wired, the mother in the hospital, the totaled car, the DUI, the girlfriend's parents' house, where he was sleeping rent-free on what they called the As Long As You Need plan. Christmas Eve 2016. 2 days later, December the 26th, the morning after Christmas, he stood in front of his laptop with a credit card in his hand, the only one he had left, the old business card with a $100,000 limit he had not used in years. 6 gym launches, 6 different cities, 6 plane tickets, 6 hotel rooms, 6 rental cars, 6 advertising budgets, all going live at the same time. He did the math one more time. $3,300 per day in burn, off a card he had no way of paying down if the launches did not work. $412 per working hour, in real time accumulating debt. He had one credit card. He had one girlfriend who had told him on the worst night of his life that she would sleep with him under a bridge. And he had one offer. That was the whole inventory. He still remembers the way his hand shook as he switched the advertisements live, off to on, the toggles flipping one by one in 6 different campaigns. Money draining out of an account that had, the day before, held $1,036. Here is what happened. In the first week, the leads started coming in. Sales calls, gym owners watching the marketing, the offer working, the same Grand Slam offer he had perfected over the last year, now running in 6 cities at once. Conversion rates holding, cash hitting the account. Not enough to feel safe, enough to keep going. The second week, more. The third week, more. By the end of the first month, January 2017, he tallied the numbers. The processing records still exist. He pulled them up later when he was telling this story, because even he could barely believe what he was looking at. $100,117 in a single month, just enough to cover the burn rate that had been coming off the credit card, just enough that he wasn't going further into the hole, just enough that the universe, to use his own phrase, caught the Hail Mary, and then it kept going. February did better. March did better. By the end of the year, the company was doing $1.5 million per month. 12 months after that, $4.4 million per month. 24 months after Christmas Eve, his company had crossed $120 million in cumulative sales. He had met Arnold Schwarzenegger, his lifelong hero, at Arnold's home. He had been asked to serve on the national board of Arnold's charity. He had built a portfolio of 7 different companies across photography, publishing, fitness, business consulting, beauty. The portfolio, at last count, was generating around $1.5 million in revenue per week, and growing. But the moment that mattered most, the moment Alex himself, years later, sitting on top of more money than he could spend, has identified as the richest he has ever felt in his life, was none of that. It wasn't the day they crossed 100 million. It wasn't the day he met Arnold. It wasn't any specific contract, deal, or breakthrough. It was a moment in a kitchen. In March 2017, 3 months after Christmas Eve, Layla was at the stove. She was making dinner. There was a spatula in her hand. Alex walked in. His heart was racing. He could feel each beat pounding in his chest. He clenched his jaw to fend off the knot in his throat that he knew was about to turn into tears. He didn't want to give in. Years of emotion, years of putting his head down, years of sleeping on couches and in spare rooms and in his car at gym parking lots. Years of telling himself that this was just temporary, that it would turn around, that he just had to keep going. All of it was, at this exact moment, sitting just below the surface, looking for any opening to come out. "We did it," he said. Layla looked up, spatula in midair. "What do you mean, we did it?" He could barely get the words out. "We hit 100K. She paused. "Like revenue?" "No," he said. "Like in our personal bank accounts." "Holy shit, really?" She ran over to him. The food on the stove forgotten, the spatula still in her hand. She wrapped her arms around his neck. He slumped into her. Every knot he had been holding for what felt like a decade, the knot in his stomach, the knot in his chest, the knot in his jaw, all of it released at once. He couldn't speak. He pulled out his phone instead. He held it up between them, screen forward, so they could both see it. $101,018. Their eyes did not move from the screen. They both stared at it together, confirming silently that this was real. It wasn't revenue. It wasn't profit still trapped in the business account, earmarked for some emergency they hadn't seen coming yet. It wasn't the kind of money that gets pulled out by next month's payroll or next quarter's tax bill or some unforeseen crisis. It was theirs, in their personal accounts, for real, for keeping. "Babe," he said, "we could not make another dollar for 3 straight years, and we'd still be okay." At their living expenses at the time, about $33,000 a year, that $100,000 sitting in their personal accounts was 3 years of safety. 3 years of being able to wake up in the morning and not run the math on whether the rent would clear. The struggle was over. Years later, he would write, and this is, when you really sit with it, an extraordinary thing for a man worth tens of millions of dollars to admit, that this moment, in that kitchen, with Lila holding a spatula, looking at a phone screen showing $101,018, was the richest he has ever felt in his life. Tens of millions of dollars later, it still is. So here is the question. How does a man go from $1,036 in a children's playroom on Christmas Eve to $101,000 in a kitchen 92 days later? Not by working harder. He had been working hard for years. The grinding wasn't new. The grinding was the constant. Not by getting lucky. The numbers held for too long, across too many cities, in too many cohorts of clients, for the answer to be luck. He got there because, when everything else in his life had been stripped away, when there was no business partner left, no money in the bank, no working car, no home of his own, no plan B and no plan C, the one thing he had left was a grand slam offer, an offer pointed at a starving crowd, priced at a premium that left room for him to deliver enormous value, constructed around a value equation that gave the prospect more dream outcome, more confidence in achievement, less time delay, less effort and sacrifice than anything else in their world, stacked with scarcity, urgency, bonuses, guarantees, and a name people actually wanted to respond to. That offer was, when everything else was gone, the only thing standing between him and bankruptcy, and it carried him out. Now, I want to be careful here, because the story I just told you is the kind of story that, if you are not paying attention, becomes inspiration porn. The young entrepreneur, the bank balance of $1,000, the Hail Mary credit card, the girlfriend who believed in him, the Arnold Schwarzenegger ending. That is not the point. The point is what got him there. And what got him there is something almost any reasonable working entrepreneur at any stage, in any industry, at any age, can sit down and build, not in a single afternoon, but over weeks, methodically, with the 4 pieces in front of them: a starving crowd, a premium price, a tuned value equation, a handful of well-chosen amplifiers. What stops most people from doing this is not the absence of skill. It is not the absence of opportunity. It is something more uncomfortable to admit. Most of us are afraid to charge what our work is actually worth, afraid to let a price tag stand on its own, afraid to construct an offer so distinctive that we can no longer hide behind being one of many. We compete, we discount, we hedge, we tell ourselves we are being humble. And meanwhile, the people who would have benefited most from our work never get the chance to be helped, because the business doesn't survive long enough to keep helping them. The man in the playroom didn't become extraordinary because he was unusually talented or unusually disciplined. He became extraordinary because at the moment when he had nothing left to lose, he stopped playing the same game everyone else in his industry was playing. He stopped competing on price. He stopped negotiating against himself before the prospect even arrived. He stopped softening his offer in advance, just in case. He charged $16,000 when his competitors charged $5,000. He charged what the value justified, and he made sure the value justified it. And when that worked, really worked, at the scale of $120 million, he did not credit it to his work ethic. He credited it to the offer, which leaves us, you and me, with a question. What would you be willing to put on your last credit card if you only had one shot? And more uncomfortably, how do you actually know whether the thing you're selling right now is worth swiping the card for? If your answer is anything less than absolute conviction, if you'd hesitate, if you'd second guess, if you'd wonder whether the price is fair, if you'd worry about whether it really delivers, then the work in front of you isn't to find a new market or a new product or a new pitch. The work in front of you is to construct an offer so well built that if it ever came down to it, you would, without hesitation, bet the last credit card you had on it. The book that walks through every piece of this, the 4 pieces of the value equation, the 5 amplifiers, the architecture of every Grand Slam offer Alex Hormozi has ever built, is called $100 Million Offers. If you have a business, or you are about to start one, this is one of the few books I would put a credit card down for myself. The Audible version is read by Alex personally, which I genuinely recommend. There is something about hearing a man tell his own bankruptcy story in his own voice that the page can't quite carry. If something in this video landed for you, if any part of the story made you look at your own pricing, your own offer, your own work, with a slightly different set of eyes, there is a subscribe button somewhere on this screen, and there is more here exactly like this on the way. Make people an offer so good they would feel stupid saying no. 11 words, from a stranger in a Vegas penthouse to a kid in a free t-shirt who didn't yet own a business. If you build one, really build one, it will not just change your business. It will, the way it did for the man in the playroom, change everything that comes after it.